Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to our next session. How is new technology changing the commodity trading industry? My name is Stefania Palma. I am the Singapore correspondent at the Financial Times, also covering Malaysia and Indonesia. And today, joining me is a rich panel, including Simon Farry, Vice President, Sales and Marketing, Iron Ore at Rio Tinto, as well as Yihang Huang, Head of Corporate Strategy at Ascent Solutions, Raji Iyengar, Managing Director, South Asia at dltledgers, Desmond Lowe, CEO at Good Finance, and Ronan Laurie, Chief Operating Officer at JERA Global Markets, JERA Group. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. I guess to set the scene, I think it's important to underscore the fact that this has been quite a bumpy and challenging year for commodity trading for obvious reasons. We saw the crash in oil prices caused by the Saudi-Russia price war, as well as the coronavirus pandemic, triggering liquidity crunches that in Singapore specifically, as well as obviously other parts of the world, but Singapore as well, where I am sitting currently, led to quite spectacular collapses in commodity traders involving names like Hin Leong, Agritrade, Zenrock. And I think today's topic of discussion is particularly timely because the adoption of new technology in this industry is seen as the possibility to resolve or at least address some of the structural risks that are still open and vulnerable to potential abuse, but that obviously underpin the global commodities trade. So the first question I wanted to ask all of our panelists are, what are some of the biggest issues and headaches and risks that each of you face that could potentially be resolved via new technology? And it will be interesting to see everyone's perspective from the point of view of traders or tech providers or producers. And speaking of technology, we have quite a few representatives of those that are creating these tech solutions. So I wanted to go on to Raji to talk about essentially what her platform is trying to resolve via essentially tools such as blockchain, AI, cloud computing. What exactly are the problems that you think are most pressing at the moment?
Thank you, Stefania, and lovely to meet the panel members here. It's a pleasure. And I think some of you, I have taken down some notes. Simon, Ronan, I'm going to come back to you and probably look at you as a customer too later. So yeah. So, I would like to look at today's topic slightly differently, Stefania. So we were talking about how is new technology changing, the commodity trading industry. What is good also would be to look at how is the commodity trading industry changing and what is it that technology can do to help? So as Simon mentioned, and as Ronan also mentioned, the trade per se is complex, right? So there is, when you're looking at cross-border trade particularly, there is movement of goods, movement of paper, movement of documents, contracts, cash, and you need to have good visibility to all of this. And again, as one of them mentioned, there's an overload of paper in this industry. That's, large set of papers. Whereabouts of tracking of goods is difficult. And also look at the multiple channels of communication we're talking about as far as document exchange is concerned. Sometimes it's over WhatsApp, sometimes it's email. So they're all very unstructured, And then, of course, losing time and money over unnecessary delays at post because papers have not arrived or documents have not arrived. So DLT Ledgers is actually well poised, and I'll come to the technology part of it. But I just want to explain the simplicity of using a platform for trade where all these parties, so if you look at any trade, there's a buyer, there's a seller, the buyer's bank, seller's bank, logistics guys, sometimes you have the certifying guys, sometimes you have, the shipping guys. So all of them actually can come together on this platform and look at, where what is at any stage in life in the value chain of trade. And blockchain, particularly with its AI and ML, as you mentioned, Stefania, becomes very important. Why is it important? Because with blockchain, and I'm not getting into the technicalities of blockchain, we'll talk about it probably in your next program. But with blockchain, what happens is there is authenticity of data, there is immutability of records, there is, whatever changes need to happen is with consensus with people in the platform, right? So dltledgers, the company that I represent, is a platform where you have these different players come in and a private, secure network which is just meant for them. So blockchain can be all over the place. Blockchain, got famous some years back, but we retreated back up the Bitcoin era, etc. But with a private, secure network, these transactions and exchange of documents can happen very well. And we also looked at, you mentioned about Hin Leong, so I thought I'd just mention it. So the other thing that is really coming up is that, the bankers or the trade finance guys are also stepping back in, being cautious about funding the traders. So one is, if you are on a technology like this, there is confidence from the banker's point of view to release funds for you, because there is good visibility of your supplier and your supplier chain, levels, different supplier levels, trade finance that we are talking about. But other than that is, since again you mentioned Hin Leong, so fraud detection. So duplicate financing is one of the most debated issues in global trade finance, right? So one financial institution seldom knows what the other one is financed, and sometimes the same papers are used for getting duplicate financing, etc. And a couple of weeks ago, many of us would have read this thing about trade registry in Singapore, what the Singapore government is doing. And really kudos to Singapore government. I think they are far ahead in this, adopting these kind of digitization and supporting and encouraging traders to get digitized to move on, So in this trade registry that happened some time back, Singapore government, so as you know, about 12 central banks. So in view of that, these guys actually finance almost 90% of this $18 trillion worth of cross-border trade that happens. And therefore now it becomes, they have to be cautious about where they're lending the money, right? So this, we call it as a trade doc validation, this registry that the Singapore government has done. So MAS, along with several banks, have come together, and they're using AI/ML technology that is on dltledgers platform. The pilot is with us, and it's a good combination of the point that you raised. So trade doc validation is a combination of process, cryptography, methodology using AI/ML challenges. Technology to address these kind of challenges. So yeah, we are quite happy to be in that position. Yeah.
And I think, Raji, you raised an interesting point, which is essentially the problem of duplication and the fact that some of the financing is based essentially on imperfect information that is being provided to. You agree with what Ronan and Simon have been talking about? Do you think perhaps instead there should be even maybe the sort of first step being taken from regulatory bodies or associations beyond the large players in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely, Stefania. So first, to re-emphasize the point that one needs to look at a platform which, so there are several POCs that are existing in the industry, as I know, when it comes to cross-border trade. And I just wanted to emphasize this, that from a dltledgers point of view, this is a production-grade platform. You have to look beyond the POC stage. That's number one. And number two, I completely agree that, getting everybody on board at the same time is not always possible, because there is resistance from other players, other counterparties. But however, I think what we need to understand is that blockchain or any technology like this that you adopt is, it's a journey. So you're not going to solve all the problem at the same time, as soon as you start it. But however, you need to start it, right? So that's number one. And number two is technology is just an enabler. So we definitely need to have the associations, the regulatory bodies, all of them to be in sync to adapt this technology. So from an interoperability point of view and from a government-to-government point of view, Stefania, you would know that Singapore government, again, kudos to them, that they are again leading in this, and they are looking at, so there is something called as a project called as Trade Trust, which has been on for some time now. And Trade Trust is Singapore's government-to-government interoperability framework to digitalize or digitize and legalize documents which are exchanged in cross-border trade. So be it what we spoke about, invoices, contracts, bill of lading, what have you, letter of indemnity, warehouse receipts, etc. We've been working on this trade trust to integrate, innovate, and support all sizes of companies, be it large corporates like BHPs and Shells and Rio Tintos, as well as the medium and smaller companies. And again, Singapore is leading the way here. The government is in conversation, and I think they're looking at about 26 countries. And this is important because you can't work in an island, right? So you need to work together with other countries too. And we have been involved in this. So there is one happening between Singapore and Rotterdam, and dltledgers is very much as part of that. That's one point. Another point I just wanted to bring up is what, again, I think Simon or Ronan mentioned, is that it's not just about digitizing or using technology to build a platform and leave it be. There has to be link back with your existing, because you can't work in isolation. So this particular platform needs to sort of plug in back with your, existing ERP, be it SAP or Microsoft Dynamics or what have you. And it should be able to plug into your, existing technology. And that's exactly what dltledgers does. So you can plug in back, pull in the data from there, so you don't have to sit and repeat everything. And these are all modular. The best part about the technology is that it's modular. So you sort of, go as and when. So for KYC, there is a module. For, bringing in a different aspect of AI ML, there is a different module. So I would say, ERP integration is a module. So we need to, it's a journey, like I said, so we need to look at it and move on with, the different steps. And again, going back to trade trust, because it's a digital utility that comprises a set of all these so-called globally accepted standards and frameworks that we are looking at, there are different components which are very important, and all these has to come into play, whether it's a legal harmonization, whether it's a standards development, whether it's accreditation structure, whether it's software components, all this needs to come together. So yes, technology players, large corporates, government body regulations, associations, trade associations, and the smaller, trade members need to come together. Yeah. So, I would say that if we have to keep the wheels of trade moving with, less supply chain disruption, more visibility in the supply chain, if we have to look at, and obviously economy has to improve, right? And all of us are cogs in this wheel. But I think the one that has most been affected is the trade finance part of it. So the trade finance guys, and this is where I want to bring a quick example of how, there was a transaction done again between Cargill in North America to, a shipment coming to Indonesia or Southeast Asia. In the peak of pandemic, when the cargo travel takes about 30 to 40 days, how the document exchange happened within 5 days, so that, your LC issuance, the money is back in rotation for you to go, look at, deploy that money for the next trade. So that's important. Trade finance, because that's eating the smaller traders. So we have to pay attention. So adopt to technology, don't be afraid, and start small.